I hope that you had a good week. And, it's time for Dr. Atkins' Diet Revolution. We're going to get into Chapter 7 today. And before I get started, just a little disclaimer here. I'm not a medical professional, so if you listen to what I have to say, please go visit with your doctor before doing anything that I talk about in my videos. So with that in mind, I'll get going on reading Chapter 7, which is titled, It's a New Energy Diet, Both Psychological and Physical. I don't know what's going on with my hair today. All right. To me, the most gratifying and extraordinary thing about this diet is the way it can completely transform a patient's personality. I continually see this happen and never cease to be amazed and delighted by this miracle. On the first visit, most people come in depressed, defeated, lethargic, looking years older than their age. How can a simple thing as a change in diet transform them within a few months into the energetic, youthful, self-confident individuals they become? Well, it does. This is one of the reasons I have become such an evangelist about this diet. Why can't everyone change this way? Of course, most fat people who lose weight by any reasonable method look and feel a lot better and younger while the weight loss holds, which, alas, isn't usually very long on most regimens. But the physical and emotional changes this diet brings about are different. So much more is accomplished than merely the weight loss. The physical, mental, and emotional symptoms of a low level of blood sugar are relieved. The result is an upsurge in mental, sexual, and physical energy, wonderful to feel and wonderful to behold. Take the case of Hal Linden, the actor and star of The Rothschilds on Broadway, who weighed 188 and a half when he came to see me. Because he is 6 feet, 1 inch tall, he didn't have any vast amount to lose. But, says his wife Frances, my husband loves to eat. He can eat his meat and mine too, any time, and he's a fast regainer. So for Hal Linden, getting and keeping even those few extra pounds off have been a problem for quite a long while. On this diet, however, which is designed for people like me who love to eat, the weight came off easily, and he had been able to keep it off without any difficulty. It's the first time in his life that this has happened. Naturally, he is delighted, and his energy has tripled, says his wife. It's fantastic. At stake in energy versus fatigue, cheerfulness versus depression. All these good new feelings of youthfulness, optimism, and energy make a big difference in a patient's desire to stay on the diet. It's not just, if I have this piece of birthday cake, I'll gain. It's, if I have this piece of birthday cake, I'll gain, and also I'll find myself sliding downhill on that old toboggan emotionally, back to being tired, depressed, and irritable. This good news zest and well-being isn't just because your figure is shaping up to suit you. It is the biochemical result of the fact that your blood sugar, the source of your brain and body fuel, is no longer falling to intolerable levels, but is being stabilized to near normal by this diet. Next to the complaint about being overweight, complaints about figure are what I hear most often on the first visit. Depression is often a symptom of low blood sugar. Because I am not a psychiatrist, few patients start out by dwelling on their depression, but it becomes clear very shortly that along with the fatigue there is depression, a well-known symptom of low blood sugar. I hear variations on this depression theme towards the end of almost every first visit. I'm so disgusted with myself. I feel absolutely desperate. I cry myself to sleep. I don't belong. I'm a mess, and I know it. Most overweight people rather expect to be depressed because overweight in our society is a social and sexual handicap, a constant ego punishment. But they don't take fatigue as much for granted. They often seem surprised about it. I don't know what's the matter with me, but the minute I finish dinner, I can't keep my eyes open. I love that course, but I can't seem to help sleeping through most of my classes. I could just die in the afternoons. I get so sleepy. It's torture to stay awake. Why is that? I don't get up all that early, yet by 11 o'clock at night, I'm out on my feet as if I were an old person. Is this the kind of thing you hear yourself saying? I ask, when are you the most tired? At what hours? Well, I think it's worst around 11 to 12 and between 4 and 6 in the afternoon is what I am most often told. Well, that really rings true with me because I know for a long time I would take a nap in the afternoon, usually about 2 o'clock or so. And I always thought it was due to sitting at the computer and doing my homework for my classes. But I mean, once in a while I get tired, and maybe it's because of a lack of sleep the night before or something. But honestly, I haven't been doing that for a while now, and I really didn't think about it. Yeah, I would get so tired sitting here at my computer, and I would just go over to the couch and lay down and like, I'm done. I cannot do any more. And if I'm going to cook supper tonight, I better take a nap. That was my thinking. But now I don't do that anymore. So, are you familiar with this fatigue pattern? Just said I am. Most people have fatigue at one time or another in the course of the day. You accept it as normal. You've done all this work, you've worried so much, or your life presents many problems. So why shouldn't you be tired? Yet almost all of us feel better merely by understanding the relationship between when we eat, what we eat, and how we feel. Why not chart out your energy pattern and correlate it with your eating pattern? You'll find that there is a relation. The basic grooming factor seems to be the level of sugar in your blood at any given time. You may fool your stomach between meals and with celery, your sour pickles, and carrot sticks, but you can't fool your bloodstream. If you have a low or a falling level of blood sugar, you're going to go right on having the fatigue symptoms until you change your eating pattern. Getting old doesn't have to mean being tired. I guess I'm getting old because I'm tired so much of the time. This misconception is one I hear all the time. I concede that getting older is inevitable. Getting tired is not. I have found in thousands of cases that once an individual is put on this diet, he can be rather well along in years and still have energy that he didn't even realize he was capable of experiencing. I know from having seen it happen so many times that not only will you feel better on this diet than on any other diet, but better than you even consider normal for yourself. Fatigue isn't necessary. It isn't normal. Whatever your age, if you're tired, if you don't have energy, then you can pretty much assume that it's because something is wrong with you. And if you are significantly overweight as well, the chances are that your problem may well be your carbohydrate metabolism and that you have hypoglycemia. For a long time, I thought I had that, I can't remember what they call it, but that chronic sleeping disorder. I actually know somebody who has that, and I thought maybe that was my issue. but I never went to a doctor and got it checked out. I just took my naps. But yeah, I thought that I had that, but I have noticed since I've been doing Atkins that I'm not as tired, and for the most part. So there is that. Definition and causes of hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is literally translated from the Greek to mean an abnormal low blood sugar level. Hypo meaning under, glycus sweet, emia in the blood. There are several types of organic hypoglycemia, which may spring from a variety of causes. We're not going to discuss these here because 90% of all low blood sugar is what is called functional hypoglycemia. And 90% of that is caused by the overreaction to carbohydrates, which we have talked about earlier. This overreaction causes a surplus of insulin to be released into the bloodstream, the prime action of insulin being to lower the blood sugar level. Contrary to your first thought, hypoglycemia is not due to the lack of sugar in your diet, but is a matter of excessive insulin response or hyperinsulinism. Never forget that sugar in your diet makes it worse in the long run. My mom had diabetes type 2, and I just really, I know that there's a very big possibility of me getting it. So that's another reason I went on Atkins, is because I know if I lose weight, then that puts me at a lower rate of risk. So that is why I decided to start doing Atkins. Let's see, where was I? Haha, I lost my spot. Okay. Symptoms of hypoglycemia. Depression and fatigue are not the only symptoms. Among the multitude of others which may be due to hypoglycemia are irritability, nervousness, dizziness, headaches, faintness, cold sweats, cold hands and feet, weak spells, drowsiness, forgetfulness, insomnia, worrying, confusion, anxiety, palpitations of the heart, muscle pains, hostility, belligerence, antisocial behavior, indecisiveness, crying spells, lack of concentration, twitching of muscles, gasping for breath, digestive disturbances, ulcer syndrome, phobias and fears, suicidal intent, convulsions, allergies, that's weird, blurred vision, addictability to alcohol and drugs, lack of sex drive in women, sexual impotence in men, underachievement at school, terrors and nightmares, even unconsciousness. Not all hypoglycemics are overweight. 2 of my prettiest nurses are hypoglycemics, and one wears a size 3, the other a size 7. But almost 70% of my patients who are overweight have low blood sugar and one type or another when they come to me. And I estimate that 3 out of 4 people with low blood sugar are overweight. A well-known actress who is a patient of mine is one. After even the most modest carbohydrate binge, down goes her energy level up to her weight. If I eat an apple, it hits me like eating 3 pieces of candy, she reports. But I came to you. Before I came to you, I couldn't lose, and I couldn't understand why. She lost 10 pounds in a month on this diet. This is the most underdiagnosed of all diseases. One of my colleagues says hypoglycemia is a symptom of body malfunction so common in our society today that the person who feels good is an oddity. I think of it as the 20th century disease because it results from our body's response to historically unique dietary stress caused by eating mainly refined carbohydrates. The symptoms are so numerous and diverse that many doctors mistrust and deny the very idea of this disease. Hypoglycemia is undersuspected and underdiagnosed to an extent without parallel in medicine. Perhaps this is due to the fact that this subject is covered for perhaps an hour in a 4-year medical teaching program, or to the medical textbooks where it is described as a relatively rare condition. In looking back, I realize that I must have missed hundreds of cases as an intern and resident by not suspecting low blood sugar. None of my instructors were thinking that way either. So please don't blame the doctor who doesn't diagnose or understand your low blood sugar. He can't be expected to know more than he has been taught. I do know this. Whoever first defined hypoglycemia as existing when the blood sugar falls below 45 milligrams percent, these are the units at which blood sugar is measured, or about half what should be circulating in the blood, set back medical progress in this area by a generation. Because of this, the average doctor is afraid to diagnose a patient as suffering from an ailment unless he sees the magic number. Although the low reading is useful in selecting cases for medical research, most hypoglycemics' blood sugar does not fall that low, even when patients are disabled by their condition to the point of being bedridden. How much mental illness is wrongly diagnosed? 1 out of every 2 hospital beds in the United States is occupied by a mental patient. Along with other doctors, I am convinced that what's wrong with a large proportion of these patients is not mental, but physical, functional hypoglycemia that could be controlled easily by a carbohydrate-free diet. Hypoglycemia can mimic almost any neuropsychiatric disorder, and patients with hypoglycemia have been incorrectly or incompletely diagnosed as having schizophrenia, manic depressive psychosis, and a variety of other ailments. My dad had paranoid schizophrenia, which is worse than regular schizophrenia, and he had manic depression, which today they call bipolar. So I know very well what it's like to live with someone like that. And if those symptoms are put on by the sugar, like he says, I don't think my dad was because of that, but sorry. If it could have helped in some way lessen the symptoms, that's an interesting thing to think about. The right diet could rescue many of all mental patients. The sad thing is that when patients are institutionalized for mental illness, the diet they go on in the institution is low in cost and high in carbohydrates. This is the exact opposite of the treatment that might improve their condition. It is my belief that if we put these mental patients on a zero carbohydrate diet, we could empty a significant number of the beds now occupied by psychiatric patients. One proof of this is the good results that many of the new breed of neutrally oriented psychiatrists are getting by treating patients with megavitamin therapy and a low carbohydrate diet. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that mental patients are going to suddenly get better if they go on a low carb diet. But I will say that I bet you their symptoms would improve. And like he said, it's cheap. So that's what they feed them. And that's why they give our kids in schools a lot of carbs, because the stuff is cheap to get. And it's really a sad reality we live in. Low blood sugar may be temporary, or it may be recurrent. Temporary low blood sugar can be caused by an emotional shock or strain. Anxiety increases the output of insulin, and this can exasperate all the low blood sugar tendencies. Many of us get temporary hypoglycemia as a result of overindulging in carbohydrates or alcohol, the way we do when we let go at holiday time or on a vacation, for example. Recurrent low blood sugar is the commonest form I see. If you duplicate the dietary pattern that brings on hypoglycemia, you duplicate the symptoms. The person who feels fatigue every afternoon at 4 p.m. because he eats a high carbohydrate lunch every noon is a typical example. When your doctor takes your medical history, this can be his most important clue to the diagnosis. Here's how anyone can control hypoglycemia. Whatever the cause, the normalizing process is the same. There is only one way to break the vicious cycle: the overproduction of insulin, which sends your blood sugar down, must be stopped. And you can accomplish this by removing from your diet whatever stimulates its overproduction: alcohol, caffeine, and of course, most important, any carbohydrate. To start with, may I repeat that exercise can be a big help? I recommend sports, fun games, because they are mentally and physically relaxing. And by increasing your body's demand for glucose, exercise encourages your body to convert more fat into sugar, therefore stabilizing the gyrations in your sugar level. So exercise produces a special euphoria of all its own. But diet is the real key to the treatment. When you remove the ready fuel of carbohydrate from your diet, your body, I don't know why I'm having trouble reading today. When you remove the ready fuel of carbohydrate from your diet, your body begins to search for an alternate source of energy, those vast untapped reserves of stored fat. This changeover is governed by the pituitary, which receives a signal to begin putting out its fat-mobilizing hormone. FMH releases energy into your bloodstream by causing the stored fat to convert to carbohydrate. Thus, the fatigue clears without having to call upon the defective insulin mechanism. On the diet, your energy is high. Cheat and fatigue returns. That's true. The fatigue symptom is a sort of built-in punishment and reward feature of the diet. It motivates one to stay on the diet because it's so great to have your energy again while losing weight as well. If you go off the diet, you learn by sad experience that up to 72 hours later, you're dragging around again the way you did before you started on the diet. Why up to 72 hours? Suppose you go off the diet on Saturday and you go back on Sunday. Why are you exhausted on Monday and Tuesday? After all, you're back on your diet. Well, the mechanism here has to do with the time it takes to put out FMH again after you've gone back on the diet. When FMH is circulating in your bloodstream, your fat stores supply you with energy. But by going off the diet Saturday night, you stop the FMH from circulating. You got a temporary lift from the carbohydrates you binged on. But then came the letdown. Without your FMH, you tend to run down temporarily. Then after 2 or 3 days on the diet, you've got enough FMH circulating once more so that you again may tap all the energy stored in your fat, thus getting rid of the fat as well as the fatigue. Got it? It's important to understand. Otherwise, you'll be blaming your Tuesday fatigue on your Sunday and Monday dieting instead of Saturday binge. Some patients are more tired than others. Now, not all patients, even though they have a low blood sugar, are easily troubled by this fatigue symptom. Not by any means, but to some people, getting back their energy is almost more important than getting back their good figures. Natalie Todd is one of those. One of my nurses asked to tell you about this using my tape recorder. It isn't so much the weight I've lost, she says. It's the difference in the way I feel since I went on the diet. I was always exhausted. My legs were tired, especially. Like lead. I had to spend a day a week in bed, and if I hadn't had to be up to run my business, I would have spent more time there. After the diet, the change was unbelievable. In a week, I felt better. After the diet, a complete personality change. Another thing, Natalie said, I craved sweets and ate candy nonstop. I was always hungry. I'd get up from the table feeling starved. That's how I gained, of course. I just couldn't get enough to eat. And all that eating did was make me hungrier. I was bitchy, too, irritable, as well as tired and hungry. I tell you, my family thinks this diet is a miracle. It has changed me so. Natalie had low blood sugar, was a chubby child, but a slim bride. She started putting on weight with her first pregnancy, but when she came to see me, she was still only 20 pounds over her bridal weight. I'd get dressed to go out and then cry, she remembers. It was because of that extra weight, but it was also being so hungry and exhausted. I was desperate when I came to see you. Sorry, I had to look at something. A slow weight loss brought a change to her in her tastes. She lost the 20 pounds slowly. This has its advantages because in the months that have elapsed, her taste in food has changed. Now she positively dislikes sweets. I'm a big cheese eater, she said. Brie, Fontina, any good cheese. I'm perfectly happy with cheese instead of dessert. Her family has potatoes and rolls, but she's not even tempted by now. The idea of that exhaustion coming back makes them look like poison to me, she says. One patient had been diagnosed as psychotic. Our files are full of histories of patients who have been physically disabled or branded as severe psychoneurotics, yet were merely severely hypoglycemic, all because their blood sugar level didn't fall low enough to satisfy the other doctors they had consulted with, and this was the root of their problem. When they were placed on this diet, the symptoms of a lifetime cleared up as if by magic. One such case sticks in my mind because her exquisite sensitivity to even small amounts of carbohydrates. Originally, Grace R. came to me to lose weight, but her real problems were physical. She was literally bedridden due to exhaustion and mental. Even a psychiatrist I know who understands hypoglycemia very well had diagnosed her as psychotic. Grace R. weighed 132 pounds when she first came in to see me. Her glucose tolerance test curve looked like hypoglycemia to me, even though her lowest reading didn't drop below 68 milligrams percent. She told me, I've been starving myself, yet struggling with my weight for years. I once weighed 155. I thought how delightful it would be to weigh 122. You know, the really sad thing is there's so many people that have had medical issues and the doctors have not been able to figure out what it is. So they just put them on some kind of crazy pill. They put them on antidepressants, anti-anxiety, whatever it is they feel like might help. Because, well, it's not, none of my medical training shows me what this is, so they must be crazy. I had a friend that had severe back pain, and that's what they did to her. And that's just not right. I think she finally did find a doctor that diagnosed her pain instead of saying that she was crazy. But I mean, she was just crying all the time because the doctors just think she's crazy. And that's just an awful feeling. No more tranquilizers needed. 5 years later, she weighs 108 and has gone from a size 12 to a size 6. But the big change has been in my whole frame of mind, an enormous change of attitude, she says. I'd spent a lot of my life on the couch and with a child guidance and marriage counselors. I was on tranquilizers and Thorazine. 3 weeks after I started the diet, no more tranquilizers. Didn't need them. I was feeling so depressed, so anxious, so weak or weepy or sleepy all the time. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't finish a sentence. Everyone, including me, thought I was a hypochondriac, the psychoneurotic of all time. Then I went on the diet and all the trouble went away. Fantastic. I am one of those people whose body can't handle anything that converts to sugar. If I have 8 scallops, it puts me in bed for a day with exhaustion. Scallops are one of the few seafoods that contain any significant amount of carbohydrate, about 1 gram an ounce. That's crazy. What to do if you are hypoglycemic? Because your doctor may prefer to ignore its existence, it is good for you to have proof that hypoglycemia is a disease in irreproachable medical standing. Dr. Cecil Harris first described it as a disease entity in 1924, and in 1949, the American Medical Association gave him an Achievement Award for this work and had a medal struck in his honor. This honor has been conferred only a dozen of times in the association's 100 years of existence. We've learned a lot about hypoglycemia since then, including better ways to treat it than the Cecil-Harris diet. For example, in 1924, and for a generation after that, it was thought that most hypoglycemics were underweight. But in recent years, it has been observed that, on the contrary, the majority of hypoglycemics are overweight. Certainly, we know from our own work and from a study done at Hahnemann Medical College in Philadelphia that the most overweight people are hypoglycemic. This won't surprise specialists because every study ever done in this field shows that every overweight person runs higher than normal levels of insulin. And as you remember, low blood sugar and hyperinsulinism are almost invariably found together. Insulin not only converts the sugar into energy or fat, but it prevents the liver and other tissues from replenishing the blood sugar supply when it is too low. As you read from the last chapter, perhaps you began to wonder about your tiredness or your edginess or your down in the dumps reactions. Could they just be due to low blood sugar? If you decide you want to know for sure, you are about to embark upon one of the greatest obstacle courses in medicine. Most people ask their doctors first. So what do you do? Well, you could ask your doctor, but suppose he is one of those physicians who believes that functional hypoglycemia is a very rare condition indeed. One way, a 4 to 6 hour glucose tolerance test. I have long felt that this test should be given routinely to every person who consults a physician, even for a routine general checkup, because low blood sugar is so common, and so many problems turn out to be caused by a disturbed carbohydrate metabolism. I'm confident that the more doctors get around to doing this simple but time-consuming procedure more frequently, but you will probably be the one to ask for it as a rule. I've done 8,000 glucose tolerance tests on overweight people. Only 25% showed the typically normal curve. Out of the 75% who showed a problem response, 25% revealed varying degrees of diabetes, and 75% showed varying indications of low blood sugar. Now, here comes a fact worth noting. 80% of the diabetic responders showed manifestations of both diabetes and low blood sugar. Yes, these two seemingly opposite conditions can and do coexist, and quite commonly. Fortunately, the normalizing treatment, this anti-carbohydrate diet, is the same as when the disorders exist singly. How to choose a doctor. For the test, you would do well to choose a doctor who has a reputation for understanding carbohydrate metabolism, for this is one area of medicine where great misunderstanding exists. If you are concerned about your weight or some of the symptoms described here, ask your doctor if he thinks a 6-hour glucose tolerance test would be in order. If he seizes upon this grand idea, then there is hope. If he turns down the suggestion, you might wonder if he is against you having such a simple series of blood tests. A glucose tolerance test may be a bit of a nuisance because it requires a half dozen or so needle punctures, but it is relatively inexpensive as laboratory tests go. All you do is drink down a beverage containing a standard amount of sugar, glucose, after which blood specimens are taken hourly and tested in the medical laboratory for the level of sugar in the blood. I recommend a thorough checkup in addition to the prolonged glucose tolerance test. For example, tests to evaluate the thyroid function, a good battery of screening tests of heart, liver, and kidney functions, electrocardiogram, the lot. You need to get an idea as to just what kind of shape you're in. Remember, overweight is an illness. It's best to have all these tests before you go on the diet. 2 months later, have some lab tests rechecked. Your triglycerides and cholesterol, your uric acid level, and anything else that was suspicious. It is good to measure the improvement. Your doctor should check you at least the beginning of every few months during this diet. Getting a glucose tolerance test. If you had no luck getting your doctor to perform the 4 or 6 hour glucose tolerance test, never settle for a 2 or 3 hour test. Perhaps he should allow you to go to a medical laboratory and have them test you. I am amazed at the number of patients who have taken this alternative in recent years. So you got over the first obstacle, getting the test done. The second obstacle is having it interpreted correctly. There is currently no commonly agreed upon set of standards to interpret the result of a glucose tolerance test for blood sugar as there is in the case of diabetes. The second way, see what the diet does for you. Will you then allow me to pass on to you the benefits of my experience with patients? I have pored over my data in 8,000 glucose tolerance tests and tried to correlate it with the symptoms my patients have had that they have cleared up with this profoundly anti-hypoglycemic test or diet. In the process of giving these tests and following the cases of thousands of patients over the years, this is what I have noticed. Patients can suffer from low blood sugar without a very dramatic finding on the glucose tolerance tests. They have showed the typical symptoms I mentioned: fatigue, emotional vitality, depression, irritability, inability to concentrate. When I have put them on the anti-low blood sugar program, the virtually carbohydrate-free diet, they lose weight and the symptoms clear up most of the time. From my own practice, I have observed at least 1,000 such people. I have tried to establish criteria to interpret a glucose tolerance test so that it correlates 100% with the actual with the actual symptoms. But at present, there is no cutoff point or boundary line. I have mentioned some of the more useful criteria in Chapter 5, but in the final analysis, the best test is the clinical trial. It's a practical test on which you'll lose 5 to 10 pounds. Here is a simple way to find out if you're hypoglycemic. Go on the first week's test diet described in Chapter 12. You'll lose weight, of course. If you also notice that you have more energy and feel noticeably happier, you probably also are correcting your carbohydrate disorder. You can literally be a new person. Within 4 days, a whole dramatic personality change can take place if you have blood sugar disturbance that is being corrected by the diet. But one warning, as I told you before, some people with a low blood sugar are in such a delicate balance that literally 2 grapes supplying 3 grams of carbohydrate can make all the difference in the world in how they feel. You won't get the right answers unless you follow the first week's eating program exactly. The results may not tell you anything if you decide you just can't skip your breakfast fruit, or even if you add tomato ketchup to your hamburger. Try the diet for a week. Rather than 3 big meals, give yourself 6 or 7 small feedings a day. Take the recommended megadoses of B complex, C, and E vitamins, as discussed in Chapter 14. This is a must. They will help to keep your blood sugar at an even level. If you lose both weight and symptoms, you know you're on the right track for you. From this vantage point, I have been tempted to develop a new axiom. The extent to which you feel better on this diet is the extent to which you are suffering from hypoglycemia. I gotta get a drink. Well, I'll tell you, when I went to get my glucose test, they were not interested in doing the 4 or 6 hour test. So they just pricked me with the needle on the finger and checked my blood and all that stuff. And they did take some other blood samples and they checked all sorts of things for me, but they just did the normal blood sugar test. So I was disappointed in that. But this doctor also said that she really believes in the Atkins diet. So that made me happy. And I even showed her the book when I was reading it at the time. I don't think I got to this chapter when I was seeing her. But anyway. Let's see. Where was I? Yeah. All right. Try the diet for a week. Yeah, there we go. All right. Pitfalls in getting correct treatment for hypoglycemia. Now that you've overcome the first few obstacles, you can still face the obstacle of getting correct treatment. Remember, some doctors still treat this condition by telling you to eat something sugary. Although it is clearly incorrect for long-term treatment, sugar has 2 distinct uses for the hypoglycemic. One, in a diagnosis when a symptom is dramatically, although temporarily relieved by eating a sweet, that proves that near certainty of the symptom is due to low blood sugar. Second, in an emergency, when the symptom gets rather severe, taking a sweet could be useful to get prompt relief, such as when the subject feels faint and ready to pass out. However, it would not be wise to repeat this mode of treatment very often, because sugar makes the condition so much worse in the long run. Sometimes, even in comparatively sophisticated hands, the ideal diet for any hypoglycemic is not easy to find. The Seal-Harris diet, which had been a standard dietary treatment for nearly half a century, is not truly low enough in carbohydrates for the majority of patients. And the diet in this book is not suitable for the underweight hypoglycemic. For them, it is too strict. It requires an experienced doctor to help the stubborn case of hypoglycemia. But beware the group of specialists who treat hypoglycemia with injections. Caution, injections of adrenal cortical extract aren't the answer. While many doctors underestimate hypoglycemia, a tiny segment has made almost a cult of it. If you happen to have to find one of these doctors, you will not only get a most sympathetic hearing about low carbohydrate diet, but also an expensive series of injections of a drug called ACE. ACE stands for adrenal cortical extract. The drug companies who make adrenal cortical extract do not recommend it as a treatment for hypoglycemia. It came out 30 years ago as a treatment for Addison's disease, for which a cheaper, better treatment has since been found. The American Medical Association's 1971 drug evaluation called ACE an obsolete preparation. Now, this book was written in 1972. So in the 40s, they had said that. Wow. The development of early diabetes is hastened. You may be told that you need ACE injections before your low blood sugar is caused by inadequate secretions from your adrenal cortex. I can only say that, excuse me, because most hypoglycemics are either early diabetics and because adrenal therapy aggravates diabetes. The development of diabetes could well be hastened when adrenal injections are given in any significant dosage. Many such people have come to me with overt diabetes, even though in reviewing their pre-ACE glucose tolerance test, it could have been seen that an early stage of diabetes already had been present. When used for the treatment of hypoglycemia, ACE is far more than an obsolete preparation, in my opinion. It is an unnecessary and potentially harmful one. I believe that the cloud over the practices of so-called hypoglycemia doctors has made the legitimate medical profession overreact, sometimes with justification, and contributed to its reluctance to accept the existence of this complaint and diagnose and treat it properly. I hope that the ideas I've presented represent a happy medium between these two extremes. Drink. This diet is safe whether or not you have low blood sugar. It's quite true that all of us, fat, thin, or perfect, whether we have low blood sugar or not, have periods of fatigue, depression, irritability. Obvious neither this nor any other diet can prevent them. These low times are the lot of mankind, but it is also true that continuing fatigue, depression, irritability, and all those other symptoms you read about earlier can have a purely physical basis in cell starvation due to low blood sugar. This diet brings down your weight without hunger and your cholesterol, triglycerides. It also controls your symptoms if you have low blood sugar, early diabetes, or both. And that's the end of that chapter. The next one is called To Stay Fat, Keep on Counting Calories. So, at any rate, I hope that this was interesting to you. I find it interesting when you can read about how your body works and things like that. And I really hope that it's interesting to you as well. If this is your first time here and you enjoyed listening to this, you can go back and check out my other live streams where I've been reading this book and find out more about the Atkins diet and just how our body works. And after I get through reading this book, I'm not going to just keep reading books. So I will get back to normal-ish content. And, well, we're the end of April now, and May is coming, and hopefully we're going to have some summer weather coming with it. That's crazy this year. But at any rate, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel and hit that bell notification so you'll know when I go live. So until next time.